You know Graybar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Graybar does that.
Welcome into the latest edition of the Show Before the Show podcast, the official podcast of minor league baseball. We are nearing Halloween, and I've got two scary faces on the screen with me, Sam Dykstra and Benjamin Hill. How do you like that intro? Welcome, fellas.
Yeah, I know we're doing this early, my time, as I'm in here in Arizona. It's 8:40 a.m. currently for me, but knowing I have a scary morning face is just how I wanted to start the day. So thank you, Tyler.
You're very welcome, buddy. Ben, what's going on? You're the only person out east this week. It's so rare that we only end up with one person out east. How are things in New York City?
Yeah, I'm holding it down. I'm holding it down for the whole city.
That's good.
In the office right now, and yeah, I don't know. I've never been one of those people who changes my social media account to have like a scary Halloween name. I just never really came up with anything. But I guess you can call me Benjamin Hill. No,
that's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the one I have for you, Ben. It's The Haunting of Benjamin Hill.
Yeah, there you go.
That's pretty good.
There you go. Thank you.
Pretty
Sam.
good. Mm-hmm. Well, alongside Sam Dykstra and The Haunting of Benjamin Hill, my name is Tyler Maughan, and we're talking all things minor league baseball in this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. And we're going to kick things off by thanking you for tuning in wherever you have found the show. You can get in touch with us, podcast at MILB.com. You can find Sam on Twitter at Sam Dykstra, MILB, Benjamin Hill at Ben's Biz, and I'm at Tyler Maughan. And we can talk some minor league baseball things as we head into the minor league baseball offseason. We're in kind of that slow period where, as the big league playoffs go on, not a lot of minor league headlines or news items, but there's always good stuff to talk about. And with the World Series starting tomorrow, we're recording this on Thursday, the 27th. There's obviously a ton on the big league side to discuss, but we're going to kick things off by talking about one of the longest existing and most historic, most storied franchises in all of minor league baseball. And that is the Buffalo Bisons, a team that has existed in some sort of iteration since the late 1870s, which is insane. The early Buffalo Bisons were actually members of the National League. Buffalo played host to big league baseball multiple times in its early years, and there was a thought in the early 1990s maybe they'd get a chance to do it again. The Buffalo Bisons' current home was built to potentially at some point maybe expand and host a big league team. But all of that is to say there's a ton of history with the Buffalo Bisons. And Ben's got a story at MILB.com about Brian Frank, who runs the Herd Chronicles website, which is dedicated really to all things Buffalo Bisons history. And this is really cool. There's so much history with that team, with that franchise, and with that fan base. It makes my heart very happy that somebody is dedicated to preserving as much of that as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. This is when I was in Buffalo last month and I got to meet Brian Frank. I'd followed his Twitter account without knowing the person behind it, the Herd Chronicles. That's herd as in a buffalo herd, Herd. And I was always impressed with this Twitter account because of the daily stuff from, as Tyler was mentioning, Buffalo's rich baseball history, things, on this date in Bison's history, or it was this player's birthday. And just really well done, often great historical photos along with the facts. There's a corresponding website with, lengthy articles and historical explorations. And it was just one of those labors of love that I didn't know too much about, but, we're all minor league history buffs. And I imagine people, listening to this podcast certainly are as well. And again, like Tyler said, very few, if any, minor league baseball locales, current minor league locales, have as rich a history as Buffalo. So, Brian Frank, who runs the Herd Chronicles, I met him when I was at the ballpark. He's a credentialed media member. He's at every single game. He does a lot of contemporary stuff as well as the historical stuff. But just talking to him, it was interesting. He grew up going to games at War Memorial Stadium, better known as the Rock Pile. That was where The Natural was filmed. And, he would get game programs. And there was a guy named Joe Overfield who eventually wrote, the book on Buffalo baseball history, who would have these stories in the game programs. talking about all eras of Bison's baseball. And, Brian is a baseball obsessed kid, was just blown away by reading these articles, realizing that the team he was rooting for was once in the majors, had Hall of Famers playing for it. And he just always been really, really into Buffalo baseball history, and then was a history major. And he said that when he was in college, he was working on a different project, but he was looking at old newspaper on microfilm and just kept coming across baseball stories in the Buffalo newspapers from turn of the century, early 20th century. And so he just started compiling so much information, thinking about writing a book. And he has just amassed such a well-organized wealth of information. And even if you're not specifically a fan of baseball in Buffalo, it's just a really interesting website to visit, the Herd Chronicles, and also a Twitter account on a daily basis to get a lot of historical nuggets, because the history of baseball in Buffalo is very similar to the history of baseball in America. Just with its inception in the 1870s and all the different iterations of the team. Brian said that right now one of his biggest things is researching Negro League teams that played in Buffalo, as well as barnstorming Negro League teams that came to Buffalo. And you come across names like Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and all these greats that came through the city. And he said that finding a Negro League box score from a game in Buffalo is like the holy grail. He's found a few, but those are the toughest thing to find. And that's really what he's looking for right now, because those weren't covered. They were exhibition games. They weren't covered in the newspaper as much as just the day-to-day Bisons were. He said in the black newspapers in Buffalo, he was able to find advertisements quite a bit, but rarely box scores and game recaps. So that's the cool thing about history. And if you get bit by that bug, you just know there's more information out there, and it becomes a lifelong quest to find it.
And Ben, how unique is this? I mean, you talked about how Buffalo has such a long history. It's definitely one of the most historic teams. It might be the most historic team that still exists in minor league baseball. But obviously each team has its own local coverage. I feel like not every team has just somebody who is so dedicated to the history of it. There's some stuff in the Midwest League that people really dig into history. But how easy is this to reproduce in other places? Like, could Durham do this? Could somebody dig into, some of the Cal League teams?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of markets where this exists in some form, or where people could really go a lot deeper with it. Certainly in my career, I've met a lot of people, a lot of historians. I think of individuals I've met in Great Falls, Montana, or Daytona Beach, who had just amassed a huge wealth of information about the baseball history in those locales. Definitely some league historians out there, Midwest League. I can think of several accounts that are dedicated to that and are archiving old box scores. So once you start looking around, you can find quite a bit. In the Texas League, the former president, Tom Kaiser, was also a historian and just had a huge wealth of information related to that league. And I think in most longstanding minor league baseball markets, if you poke around a little bit, you can find at least the unofficial team historian, someone, usually an older gentleman, but don't want to stereotype, who really has gone out of his or her way to find that information. But not too many projects I'm aware of that are based on one team and have the scope and scale and wealth of information that Brian Frank has done with the Herd Chronicles. So it's a cool thing to check out.
Really is a pretty fascinating undertaking and story, of course, which you can read at MILB.com. And Ben's stuff, of course, does not stop there. The newsletter continuing to provide all kinds of content straight into your email inboxes if you have signed up for the Ben's Biz Beat newsletter. And if you haven't, you should. Ben, what's the lowdown on what is currently popping, as the kids say, in the newsletter?
Well, all sorts of stuff. That's what I love about this beat, the Ben's Biz Beat, that even during slow times, there's always so much to go back to or explore. And something I'm just starting this week and that will continue throughout the off season is, of course, I talk about it a lot, on this podcast, my road trips and having a designated eater at every ballpark who eats the, concession items that my gluten-free diet prohibits. So, of course, I did designated eaters again this year and, shared a lot of stuff on social media and incorporated some of it into other articles. But I didn't really give the designated eaters their due in terms of standalone write-ups. And I started that this week with Sugarland, Constellation Field, the Sugarland Space Cowboys. designated eater Mike Lockridge. And I'm going to be doing that, throughout the off season, is going back to these ballpark visits and, shining more of a spotlight on the food as well as the designated eaters themselves. So I think that's, during this slow time of year, it's always good to kind of have these kind of peripheral projects or things from the season you can dig back into. And man, I was in Sugar Land in May and looking at it again, close to 6 months later, I was like, man, this stuff did look good. Brisket nachos and with this Dr. Pepper based barbecue sauce, just like a phenomenal item. And the Howdy Dog also had this Dr. Pepper based barbecue sauce. And I think if you're from Texas, the Frisco Rough Rider Stadium used to be called Dr. Pepper ballpark. Dr. Pepper is a big thing in Texas, and not just as a drink, but as you can see, incorporated into the barbecue and the local cuisine writ large. And also in Sugar Land, for dessert, they had this Cosmic Sundae, which is topped with astronaut ice cream crumbles, which I thought was, they have the space branding and everything. And astronaut ice cream, you're probably familiar. I was one of many kids who, growing up, it didn't seem to matter what museum. It just seemed like if you're a museum, you have astronaut ice cream. In the
that really is
shop.
true. It was like, it wasn't predicated on the field of the museum's study. It was just like any museum. I think even at the zoo, I think the Denver Zoo carried astronaut ice cream.
I think that
Very good point.
That is the case. You don't ever go to like a supermarket or a convenience store and pick up some astronaut ice cream. Like, you have to go to a gift shop, or if you're attending a Sugar Land Space Cowboys game, I'm not sure if they sold the astronaut ice cream just as a standalone freeze-dried snack, but I thought that was a creative thing to top, regular soft serve with those freeze-dried crumbles, and very much tied into the space theme, a Cosmic Sundae.
All right, Ben. Well, the Mill Marvel partnership is still rolling along here. We're still getting logos. We're about to go on a little bit of a pause with that, with the World Series, but I know there were 2 logos that came out this week. Not that you necessarily like, but you like the concept of it because they bring in a local tie, something that is very specific to the team. And that's the Arkansas Travelers, who used the possum Odie in their logo, and also Reno, who used Mr. Baseball. Well, I don't think a lot of people know about Mr. Baseball. Who is Mr. Baseball?
Yeah, if you happen to see, so 64 of the Marvel logos out of 96 are now out, and there is a pause right now, I guess, for the World Series. Don't want to step on the World Series toes by unveiling minor league themed superhero logos. So those will resume the rollout on November 7th. But 2 recent ones, yes, Reno's Mr. Baseball. If you look at that and you don't know the story, you're like, well, that makes sense. It's an anthropomorphic baseball, very muscular and flying through the air. But that is specifically Reno's superhero logo, because Mr. Baseball has been a thing at their home ballpark, which I believe is still called Greater Nevada Field. Sometimes it's tough to remember what ballpark names are with the corporate name changes. But that team started in 2009, the Reno Aces. And one of just the unique elements they added was they have Mr. Baseball, this giant talking baseball, who pops up from behind the center field fence during the singing of "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and he sings the 7th inning stretch. I mean, his mouth moves at least, but it's just one of those quirky minor league things of this giant baseball popping up just for this one song only, and singing an iconic song of the sport. So I was glad that they incorporated such a unique, goofy aspect to their game day experience into their Marvel superhero Defenders of the Diamond logo. And, same thing with Arkansas Travelers. Their kind of secondary mascot, Odie, caused a big stir when he came out. Man, when was that? Better part of a decade ago for sure. But this very rural, off the grid, backwoods Arkansas possum mascot that was very unique and got a lot of attention. Maybe not all of it positive, but hey, it's all positive attention in minor league baseball when people are paying attention to your secondary mascot. And now Odie, Otey, is a superhero as part of the Defenders of the Diamond series. So just when you have an Arkansas possum as a superhero, that's just very unique as well. And I was happy to see Odie get some powers.
That's some pretty cool stuff. You can continue reading about all of those Defenders of the Diamond logos and such at milb.com/Marvel as well. And Benjamin Hill, go subscribe to the newsletter, which you can do anytime, and you can get all of Ben's latest and best stuff there. And check the site as well, milb.com. Really cool story on the Herd Chronicles and everything else. And Ben, we are headed to the Florida State League.
Wait, before we do that, Ben,
yes,
before you intro our next interview, we have to let you pound your Phillies chest here.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
The World Series is starting on Friday. You are our native Pennsylvanian, Philadelphia area native. Tyler and I have seen our teams in the World Series. All three of us have seen our teams in the World Series. Tyler a little bit longer than some of us, but not to rub that in. And
probably never again, let's be honest.
Yeah, we'll see. You never know. But yeah, like with the Phillies coming up in game 1, what are your expectations for the World Series?
Yeah, well, I'm deeply biased. It's funny working, in baseball for Major League Baseball, covering the minor leagues, and of course every affiliate. I don't keep my fandom a secret, but in the day-to-day, I don't like to walk around or tweet or be like, go Phillies, because I'm trying to objectively cover the entire landscape. But especially in the postseason, it's hard not just to really just feel like a fan again. And it's been so fun. I grew up in Ambler, Pennsylvania, about 20 miles north of the city of Philadelphia. And I didn't really go to minor league games growing up. I didn't go to many Phillies games, but I was an obsessive Phillies fan from the jump. Mike Schmidt, my first hero, kind of late in his career. And that was just such a defining part of my baseball fandom. I mean, my son is named Harry, at least in part because of the influence of Harry Callis, the Phillies' longtime broadcaster, Hall of Fame broadcaster. And I still follow the Phillies, and it goes without saying they've had a decade plus of, largely, I don't quite want to say ineptitude, but disappointment for sure. And to see this run happen just out of left field, so to speak, has been really fun. So am I biased? Yes. But I feel like with what the Phillies did coming in as underdogs against St. Louis, against Atlanta, against San Diego, why should that not continue now? I mean, it's just part of their script right now that they're going to keep running all the way to the World Series, and a season that, especially as September went on, started to feel like same old Phillies. Like, are they even going to get this 6th spot in the playoffs, a spot that didn't even exist until this season? Are they even going to be able to do that much? Then bam, they do. Postseason hits, and all of a sudden they're a team that is just a juggernaut. The Astros are as well, but hey, there's postseason history here. Of course, the Astros were in the National League in 1980, but the Phillies pulled out that one in 1980 in the NLCS, before my time, but one of the greatest postseason series of all time. So how about another greatest postseason series of all time with, of course, the Philadelphia Phillies emerging triumphant.
How many poles did you climb after Bryce Harper's homer?
Well, they were too lubricated. So I tried, but I kept sliding all the way back down, which is weird. I wasn't even in Philadelphia, but I think they just knew I was around and were like,
yeah,
they just brought some Crisco to your neighborhood. They're like, we gotta make sure Ben's not going to be doing this.
Yeah, just in case. But yeah, man, it's been wild. It has been really wild, and it's fun. I'm always a baseball fan. I think we all are. But as you know, when you work in it, the day-to-day joy can be a little tougher to feel, and the postseason really pushes that out the window and just makes you feel just excited. Every day I wake up and I'm like, why isn't a game today? Why isn't it happening yet? Let's go.
Well, it is all starting the day that you hear this podcast, possibly on Friday, the 28th of October. And we are excited for a resident Phils fan in that regard, Benjamin Hill. And now we're headed to the Florida State League. Ben, tell us what we got coming up.
Yeah, the Fort Myers Mighty Mussels. Fort Myers was a community that was obviously, in the path of and deeply affected by Hurricane Ian. And we want to check in with the team and, see how they were affected by the hurricane and what kind of things they're doing now in the wake of it, just as, members of the community. So we're going to speak with Mighty Mussels, Fort Myers Mighty Mussels General Manager Judd Loveland about just that. Here on the Show Before the Show podcast, we are joined by Judd Loveland, the general manager of the Fort Myers Mighty Mussels. Judd, thanks so much for being here today.
Really appreciate you having me, Benjamin. Thank you.
And, before we started recording this conversation, I just kind of reflexively said, how are you? Just as one does. And quickly realized with what you and your team and, everyone in Fort Myers has been through recently with Hurricane Ian, that is a loaded question. But I'll ask it again, how are you?
Well, we're living a little bit of a different norm, so to speak, down here. We're good. All of our people are safe. Our employees, fans, community members, partners, everyone reached out to is safe, which is the biggest thing to be thankful for. But with that said, things are much different, like I mentioned, and adjusting to what's going on here in the market in the area. That they're, with everybody being safe and healthy, there are those that have lost a lot. They've lost a lot in the way of property and possessions and things that and people that know people that have lost friends or family, and so it really gets to a point where it's a different reality that we're going through now. And so all in all, we're okay, but we're in this kind of haze of a new norm and trying to learn how to navigate that and help everyone around us in the meantime.
Yeah, really unique and obviously, difficult times for the area. I guess to start at the beginning, so to speak, when it first became apparent that there's going to be, a hurricane coming, and it was definitely something to take seriously, what is your process as an organization? There's obviously a lot to balance. Everyone has to worry about their homes and their families, but also, the ballpark as well. What was the sort of action plan that you put together, knowing that a storm was going to hit and, that it was a serious one?
Yeah, so we're actually quite familiar with significant weather here in Fort Myers. We deal with the late summer rainy season, afternoon thunderstorms. Storm proofing the building is something that we go through several times a year commonly. And when we get to hurricane season, it's, I'd say on average, probably 1 or 2 times a year where we're within or close enough to a hurricane cone that we have to activate, the storm proofing part of it. For us, that started the week before the hurricane, and as the models started to become more clear, we started to take some things that are externally here in the building and start getting them put inside. Fortunately, we were at a point where the season was already over, so the winterization process of getting the building prepared for the winter was already well underway. We were probably 75-80% there in terms of getting that done, so that really helped get us further along the road with stormproofing the building. But as we got into that weekend before, we as we got closer to that Monday, we started sending out messaging late Saturday into Sunday, telling people, okay, let's take tomorrow and make sure your personal situation is squared away. You have supplies, you have gas, and all of that. We ended up still having the office open for the front part of Monday, and that was really to make sure that the rest of the building and facility was storm proofed. We, if you don't know, or some of your guests may not know, that we are a spring training site here. We're the spring training home of the Minnesota Twins, our parent club. We're also at a complex that's owned and maintained by Lee County, our 2 closest partners that we have, the Minnesota Twins and Lee County. So we work collectively when it comes to preparing the building, and by that weekend, all entities were well underway with getting it ready. The academy was being cleared out, players were being sent home, staff was being notified, and again, by that Monday afternoon, the place kind of became a ghost town, and at that point, everybody was getting ready to hunker down for that following Tuesday.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts to something like this, especially with, as you said, not just a minor league ballpark, but an entire complex hosting spring training. And ultimately, what sort of damage did the ballpark and the complex sustain once the storm went through.
Yeah, the storm itself, I mean, I can give you my personal take on it. I mean, I've lived in Florida my whole life, not always in Fort Myers, but I've lived in Florida my whole life. It was by far the worst hurricane I've ever been through. Just it wasn't moving fast. It was very big. It was very strong, and it just took forever to get through the area. And it did. I mean, widespread damage. I'm sure everyone has seen pictures and video clips of what happened in this area. So it was definitely a very frightening time. And when you're going through something like that, your cell phones don't work, internet goes down, you lose power, you lose connectivity. It becomes like something that, you probably can only imagine, in a dream or something, if you haven't gone through it before. And at that point, you start really worrying about people. You start worrying about people that live close out to the coast that, did this person evacuate? Did I hear from that person? And in the meantime, like your homes or your apartments are literally shaking. It's screaming and the wind's screaming. The facility, like I said, was a ghost town by that point, and was prepared as well as it could be for it. The aftermath, I think my first day up here was the afternoon after the storm. So I guess that would have been Wednesday afternoon, evening. And that was when I first put eyes on it. At that point, this facility was being activated as an emergency staging site, which it does during these type of events. It was the same thing during Hurricane Irma in 2017. And so when we got up here, myself and a couple of colleagues, we were preparing for the National Guard to move in, and pulling up and looking at this place was a little bit different. But by and large, the structure, the stadium, the fields, and all that were fine. Lot of I don't want to say like maybe cosmetic type damage, fencing, canopies, some trees down, definitely some areas that got beat up more than others. But anything that was outward facing definitely got a lot of wind, a lot of rain. But fortunately, this wasn't an area that had a lot of flooding, which was fortunate for the facility. The academy, made it through fine, and good enough to where it could be activated as an emergency staging area, which, again, by that following day, people were moving in, National Guard, multiple law enforcement agencies, EMS, all kinds of emergency response just kind of takes over, and for us, we operate spring training. We have our crisis management teams. We have our emergency preparedness that we do. But when things like this happen, it becomes a state site, and at that point we just, we offer our services. How can we help? But it becomes very real, very quick. And it certainly did, by 2 or 3 days after the storm, there were, helicopters landing here, trucks in and out. I mean, it's being guarded by the National Guard, and a lot of assets, a lot of resources were here in a really short time frame. I mean, they sent a lot here very, very quickly, and which was great to see. So, but by and large, it did fine. I mean, the facility itself, we've been off and on working here, and doing volunteering and things with some of these agencies for weeks now. A couple of us, the offices are closed. Most everybody's still remote. But we're fortunate to have such an amazing complex. The county Lee County has been just amazing with how they've handled this thing. And I just seeing it firsthand and seeing what's happened here has been so impressive to me.
And as the leader of the Mighty Mussels organization, of course you're concerned about Hammond Stadium and the facilities, but once this happens, I'm sure you're of course concerned about your home and your family, and then also all the members of the front office staff. And as you mentioned, people might not have signal or power. What was the process like in the aftermath of the storm kind of getting everyone together, maybe not physically speaking, but, checking in on people and, and finding out the status of everyone in the organization.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I can tell you, I mean, I've learned a lot, through this process. Hopefully never have to go through something like this again. But, when it comes to communication, we're really big on that here. We're kind of a unique setting. I think we're really one of a kind in how we're set up with, being a single A affiliate of the Twins, but also operating here at the spring training site, but also having a lot of other different components based on the county's use to the facility and what we do here, to where, we're worried about the Mighty Mussels employees, but there's a lot of people. I mean, Minnesota Twins to Lee County, we're talking, grounds crew, maintenance people. And we had started some communication chains and tried to kind of almost like you would an organizational chart. You check in the people that are around you here and around you there and have them check on theirs and check. So it was like a trickle kind of domino effect of just trying to communicate with people as best you could. Like I said, when the storm was going on, that was impossible. We had sent some messaging out when the storm came. That was that. By the next day, we're to the point where we only were really communicating via text. And even that time, doing that was, you could send it out and sometimes people wouldn't get it for 3 or 4 hours. Other people would get it like this. And we started just communicating that way on saying, okay, if does anybody need anything? Does anybody, hurt? Does anybody have any damage? Does anybody need any quick response right now? And as the hours went on and the days went on, it became wellness checks and okay, this group or these people are fine and this person's okay. This person lost their house, they're at a shelter. This person, is leaving town now, they're evacuating. And we had a lot of that. We had some people that did stay here, but then as soon as it got safe enough to go outside and travel, then people left the area at that point. So it was like an ongoing thing for a few days of just trying to keep track of everybody. As the dust settled a little bit after that, we those of us that had power and working water just started to spread the word to invite those that didn't over. And whether it be for meals, whether it be to wash, do a load of laundry or take a shower or charge your cell phone. It was just, we started scheduling times. Hey, if people want to come over at this time, we're going to grill something out, you can charge your phone and okay, or this. And so we slowly kind of began to do that. And as that was going on, different areas of town started to have power restored, water. A lot of that was happening inland before it was happening out on the islands and Cape Coral and coastal areas. But there was about a week, of that where there really was no ability to communicate any way other than cell phones and maybe a direct call or a text, but emails were pretty much lost and forgotten with Zoom calls, schedules. I mean, we ended up, I think it was the day, maybe it was the Tuesday of the storm where we had effectively canceled everything throughout the end of that week. By the end of the week of the storm, we had canceled everything for the following week as well. Offices closed, by the time emergency response came in. So we were entirely shut down for almost two full weeks because of it. And then finally the Monday thereafter is when we started to, ask for employees to start connecting and be remote and plugging back in a little bit. And by that point of time, we were asking that of all employees that had essential services at their homes. And by then I think we had all but just a couple that were unable to still have internet at that time. Everybody had power and water by then, but there were still a few that didn't have internet. So it was a long process, to say the least. The longest I've ever been through with something like that.
Yeah. And as you begin to, certainly not return to normalcy, but find that people are, back up and running with their power and their internet, then there's also the angle of your organization, like all minor league baseball organizations, are important in the community and want to be a face in the community and a help in the community. And, so at what point are your thoughts able to turn to that of how do we as an organization get out in the community and help with the recovery process.
That again, I learned a lot in this process, and one thing that was great to see was, it wasn't but 2 days after the storm, and I had people reaching out to me like, "Hey, how can we help? What can we do?" And these were the people that, by and large, they never really lost power internet for any length of time. They were at home and somewhat normal inside of their own house or apartment bubble, and wanted to get out but didn't know what to do. And like I mentioned, a couple of us had come up here, and as we were getting the facility ready to house first responders, we have our food and beverage and catering department. A couple of our people came up, and we kicked into action, and our first thought was, well, let's get some product out there. Let's make sure these people have water and food and toiletries and towels to shower, and just stuff that we have. And we got up here, and it was not even a day went by, and it was very noticeable that people had plenty of resources. They had plenty of water, food. There was a lot of that. So, and then, at that point in time, we're starting to shift our focus, and a couple more people reaching out saying, how can we help? What can we do? And it was right around that time that we were put in touch with some people from the World Central Kitchen. And they had been called here on site as part of the recovery efforts, and organized an area at our academy where this organization that they're all over the world. They are in multiple areas, regions, worldwide. Some of the people we worked with had just come from the Ukraine or Poland to here. Others from the Dominican. And we were put in touch with them, and as soon as they moved in, our food and beverage director, Lauren Merrigan, immediately plugged in with them and was right in the middle of the kitchen, wearing his chef's coat and getting after it, cooking. And after about a day or two and getting a chance to meet with them, we started to really concentrate our efforts with them, because it was apparent to us that what people really needed more than anything was manpower. They needed bodies. They needed some muscle, they needed some Mighty Mussels, some people to help. And so at that point, again, we were communicating primarily on text, and we started to get the message out that, hey, here we can get some people over here. And at first it was maybe just 2 or 3 at a time, working a shift and doing everything from cooking to prepping and boxing meals, and then helping with the distribution staff, which was, loading trucks, driving trucks, going out to sites that were, devastated. The first few days we were loading helicopters. They were flying helicopters in, landing them. We were loading them with food and water. They were taking them off. They were flying them to Sanibel, flying them to Pine Island, Captiva, some of the areas that were, just devastated by this, that had no access to land travel, to bridges or anything. And as time went on and we started to get emails back going, we started to communicate this to our part-time staff, full-time staff, everybody from ownership down to interns, and just said, okay, here's some information. Here's what they need. Tomorrow they need drivers. The next day they need logistics and people to load trucks. And people showed up, and a lot of our employees started, again, that had power and internet and were pretty squared away inside of their own bubbles, started to come up here daily and work daily with the World Central Kitchen. So after a few days, there was a lot of people walking around with World Central Kitchen shirts on and Mighty Mussel hats on, whether it be World Central Kitchen employees or our employees, and a lot of other volunteers in the community. A lot of people that just found out this organization was here, went online, registered for a spot, and came in. So it was to us the best way that we could help the community is to, as operators of this facility, is come here and help operate this facility but in a way that'll distribute thousands, hundreds of thousands of meals into this community, to the point to where it's still going on today. And I've been back to work here at the stadium pretty much full time. This is my second week. But I stop in there on my morning drive, pull into the complex, and I'll check in with the guys. We had 3 employees there today again. And every day they're still up there. So that's where we sent drew our attention is trying to volunteer and help this organization. It sounds like they're going to be packing up and out of here in the next few days, which will be sad to see. They're great people to work with, but I think a good sign overall that our market and our area is on the road to recovery here, and being a little more self-sufficient. That's really where we focused our concentration. As time goes on, there's been a lot of internal conversation between, Mussels, ownership, Twins, partners, on going in and doing some things as we get closer to spring training and into spring training, and potentially some donations, some charitable things. There's a lot of that stuff that's in motion right now, none of which I think is clear enough to really speak on at this point. But I think that 2023 will really see a lot of, I think the baseball becoming what can bring this area a little bit more back to normal at that time. It'll still be a long road to recovery, but hopefully the Twins and the Mussels can help get some things somewhat close to back to normal as we approach spring training of 23.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the normal off-season timetable is quite different for the organization this year. But building off what you just said, what I imagine that spring training in March and Mighty Mussels opening day in April, you're gonna have to pack more planning for that season into a shorter amount of time than usual. But it also seems like it might be a much more meaningful season, just having gone through this, just to see baseball again. Where are you at right now in terms of being able to do the quote unquote normal stuff, involving just, planning for the season ahead?
Yeah. Me personally, I can tell you, I feel a lot more organized. I was just talking to a couple employees about this today. I feel a lot more organized, than 2 weeks ago or even a week ago. The trouble is actually taking action and making progress, right now is difficult because, everyone's kind of like us, they're working, but they're working on really a lot of recovery and a lot of, relief and trying to pick up the pieces and repair things. And then, people out there are dealing with their insurance companies, they're dealing with their business partners that lost this, or their clients that lost, and they're trying to help them. And that makes it really difficult to make progress in a normal way. Right now, the end of October, we'd be a month into our hiring or our job application and hiring processes for spring training. We'd be ordering equipment. We'd be well underway at this stage in the game. And right now we're not there. But I see it as a challenge. I think, the last couple of years have taught us that, you don't always need all that time. We had to deal with a little bit of a delayed season last year, and some uncertainty late into the equation last year. And the year before was pretty abnormal as well, so I hate to say we've become accustomed to it. So I guess a lot of us here our anxiety levels are not what they would have been had this been our first round of being almost in November and not what we think is ready. That said, the Twins, the Mussels, and Lee County have, the last couple of years have found a way to, I think, really get it done and get it done in a very professional and fan-friendly manner. I don't see that being any different this year. There's some really good people that work here for these organizations, and people that care a lot. They really just, it's not just coming in and working your hours and going home. It's a lot of thought and effort and concentration that goes into what goes on here for the Twins, the Mussels, and Lee County. And I think this year, will be another sign of how much our people care and what we can do for the community here.
Yeah, you're right. And taking not just the hurricane, but the last couple of years in this industry, abnormal has unfortunately sort of become the new normal. But nonetheless, wishing you the best, you, the entire organization, the best on the road to recovery and planning for opening day 2023. And Judd Loveland, general manager for the Fort Myers Mighty Mussels. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast and filling us in on your situation.
Thanks, Benjamin. Thanks for having us, and really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Big thanks to Fort Myers' general manager, Judd Loveland, for joining the show on this week's edition. And with that, we're going to pivot and talk some baseball as we head into the final days of October in a sign of our changing world. I got a text from my dad the other day, and this is not really a sign of our changing world at all, but it is a sign of the changing world as it at least pertains to baseball over the last, however many years that the playoffs have been expanding. My dad texted me and said, quote, "I was curious about how late in the year the World Series takes place these days. I looked up the dates in the 1963 World Series, which was when my dad was 10 years old. Do you want to guess what the dates were for the 1963 World Series, Sam?"
Oh boy. I'll say like October 3rd.
It was October 2nd. October 2nd to the 6th was the World Series. And the World Series now is barely even starting in October, which is crazy. But hey man, I know we've had a whole bunch of the higher seeds got upset. We should just declare the champion after the regular season and wipe out the playoffs. I love the new playoff format. I think it's great. And not just because we're seeing some upsets and Cinderella stories. I think it's fantastic. And I already have a friend who's an Astros fan who was preemptively complaining about well, if the Phillies win, they're not the best team. The Astros are the better team in the world in the regular season, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. This isn't the Premier League. We don't crown champions based on regular season results. That's what playoffs are for. I don't care about who had the better regular season. You get into the playoffs, you win the World Series, you earned it.
Right. I mean, it's funny hearing an Astros fan say that, because if that were true, then the Dodgers would have been champions a while ago.
Exactly.
The Astros have no legs to stand on, except for an AL pennant. They would have gotten the AL pennant if that was the case. But that's not what we're playing for starting on Friday. So I think it's too early to judge. Honestly, I've enjoyed this. I really have.
Way too early.
The games have been a lot of fun. Yes. It's been great to see Philly go on this run, to get a guy like Bryce Harper, who is a superstar in the sport. I mean, a lot of people have judged up, we've known about Bryce Harper for a decade and a half at this point.
Yeah. Since he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 16 or 17.
Yeah. And even before that, he was appearing in the New York Times. And he was declared the LeBron James of baseball for a long time. And here he is finally playing in his first World Series because he went on an insane run. I kind of wish I had asked Ben this, what was his reaction when Harper hit that homer? Because that's going to be playing in Philly forever. Those are just really, really cool moments. But this is a 1 season sample is what we're getting right now.
Right. Yeah. Even by the end of the World Series, it's way too early to judge. You got to let this playoff format play out for 5 or 10 years before you can actually judge whether or not it over favors. And this is the same argument against wild card teams for the last, couple of decades that, we've seen so many wild card teams in the World Series because they've had to play, backs against the wall for the last however long of the regular season to make it into the playoffs and whatever. Okay. Sorry. That's fun. Playoffs are fun. Cinderella stories are fun.
And the Phillies aren't a bad team.
No, it's not like this is an 81 win team that somehow got in a wild card. They played in the best division in the National League. They knocked off their, the reigning World Series champions who came out of that division. I have zero problem with this whatsoever.
Yeah. And
Zero
like, you
problem
look,
with it.
I brought up Harper before, but you look at the team like Kyle Schwarber
Yeah.
has been insanely good at hitting home runs this year, not so good on average and strikeouts, but like hitting the ball hard. That's what
Yep.
Kyle Schwarber does. Reese Hoskins, one of our favorite players to cover during the minor leagues, has become an icon in Philly. Like, he's always been pretty well known because he's homegrown and all that stuff, but his bat slam, like, that's an iconic moment.
Yes.
I know we're talking about a lot about the Phillies here. The Astros have done the same thing, like Jeremy Pena winning ALCS MVP
Right.
was so cool as a rookie. I think he was the fifth ever rookie to ever win an LCS MVP. So, you know, it's not easy to do, but he's replaced Carlos Correa incredibly well at shortstop. And guys like Yordan Alvarez getting their spot in the spotlight. I know he didn't have as great an ALCS, but like might be the best left-handed hitter in the game right now. Justin Verlander, coming off Tommy John, might be the best right-handed pitcher, certainly in the American League, maybe in baseball. Like, it's just been incredibly fun to see these guys take the stage and run with it. And, you know, somebody like Ranger Suarez closing out the game in Philly after he was used as a starter. Sir Anthony Dominguez being really good as a reliever. Framber Valdez continuing to be dominant out of the Houston rotation. Like, this series is filled with stars. It is not just guys who got lucky.
Right.
Both managers have been really good at using their rosters and making the most of the talent that they have. And
Two managers
the right
are
guys,
easy to cheer for.
yeah, in the right spot. I mean, Dusty Baker, imagine if he gets
Yeah.
his first World Series. Is anybody going to say, like, well, you know, he was actually had the second best record in the regular season? No.
Right.
They're not going to put that on the plaque.
No.
When he gets into the Hall of Fame.
So
I hope he does. So.
Let us state for here and now that your arguments against the playoffs are all dumb. And we're moving on from that.
Well, Tyler, do you have a pick?
You know, I picked the Astros last year because I just feel like the way the world goes now, a team like the Astros is probably going to win a World Series. You know, I will if Dusty Baker gets a ring, I will be very, very happy for Dusty Baker. I think the Astros are the better team. I think the Astros will probably win the World Series. Now, the Astros are what they are in the landscape of American sports now. And, you know, my same friend who is mad that the Phillies are in the World Series because they're the opponent for the Astros, who are the better regular season team. He's also very much of the mindset of like, people need to get over the Astros cheating scandal. You know, I don't agree with that. I don't think people need to get over that at all. And I think that's something that will be attached to the Astros franchise for as long as people have memories of it happening. But you can think the things that you want to think about the Astros because of that. And I will not judge or disagree with people for that. But I do also think that it is important to point out that the Astros are a wildly different team now than they were when they won that World Series. They have a lot of the same contributors, but yeah, you look at a lot of the names that are gone. This team is very, very different from that one. And there are some really good stories and some really interesting pieces that are, you know, pressing this franchise forward. And, you know, so I think the Astros are the better team. I think they probably will win, but it's hard to pick against a team that's on the run like the Phillies are, just from an emotional standpoint. I know the Astros have yet to lose a playoff game. Obviously, they've been an incredible story so far this postseason, but man, the energy in Philadelphia right now, like, what a win that would be for that franchise, for Bryce Harper to be able to carry a team to a World Series title and fulfill the destiny of his baseball life. That'd be incredible. So, you know, I just talked out of both sides of my mouth to kind of pick both of them. I think it'll probably be the Astros, but you know, I think the Phillies have something very special happening there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it just comes down to like the cold calculating
Right.
version is that the Astros are the favorites, and then they're favorites for a reason. And then you kind of have to talk yourself out of the Astros.
Yeah.
Their
That's a good way
starting
to put it.
rotation is just so good. Their lineup is deeper than Phillies is. It's tough to see them being beat, but it can happen.
Yeah,
You know,
certainly.
I said this on another podcast this week. Like, if you get Schwarber magic, if you get Hoskins magic, if you get Harper magic, if you get Sir Anthony Dominguez throwing like 2 or 3 innings every other game, and Zach Wheeler just going off in one game, and then somehow maybe, you know, Aaron Nola has a good game 1, Zach Wheeler has a good game 2. it's possible that Philly steals one in Houston, and
Yeah.
then it's going back to Philly tied even, and now
That's
they
the
have
thing.
home field advantage.
If the Phils can steal one in Houston, I think if the Mariners get game one in the division series, I think there's a very good chance the Mariners win that. I think the Astros led for an entirety of like 5 innings in that series, and they ended up sweeping the Mariners. It's very different. The Astros obviously have not lost a game in the postseason, but it is not that the Astros have looked unbeatable, which I think are two different things. So
you don't get to
Philly,
18 innings or whatever it was.
Right.
Getting some luck in there.
If Philly is able to steal a game in Houston, then I feel like there is much more of oh man, they can really do this. You go back to Philly down 2-0, it's not it's not an impossibility, but man, against that Houston team, winning 4 out of 5 seems very, very difficult.
Yeah. So, I mean, my pick officially, I've made this in other places, was Astros in 5.
Yeah.
I do think Philly can steal one with Zach Wheeler, potentially in game 2, or if they bring him back for like a game 4, or probably later in the series. But I have Astros in 5. And I think Alvarez is going to be the MVP, just because he's such a good left-handed hitter.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy just hits
the
ball so incredibly well. Philly is a little bit more of a hitter's park. It'd be better if he was right-handed, so he was aiming for the Crawford boxes, but obviously that hasn't been a concern during the regular season. So
yeah,
I think this is kind of his coming out party on a very big national stage. But would not be surprised if it goes either way. I think we're in for a fun series no matter what.
I agree. Also, on just a completely different note, how about Jose Altuve? Yikes. 3 for 32, 11 strikeouts. Yikes. I didn't really have any point to bringing that up. Just that dude is, was the best hitter on the planet for a while, and does not his previous numbers in the postseason. Well, 2021 numbers were not very good. He hit 209. I mean, the OPS was fine. He had an OPS of 777 thanks to 5 homers. But prior to that, 2020 and 13 playoff games, an OPS of 1229, 971 OPS in 2019. In the 2017 year, a 1022 OPS over 18 games. Interesting. Anyway, let's move on. We were actually supposed to talk about that second, but I just somehow shoehorned.
I mean, it's the big baseball news of the week.
It is. That is true.
Yeah,
that is true. We're a minor league baseball podcast. Just spent 20 minutes talking about the big league World Series, but hey, man, it's World Series time.
I mean, again, if we want to turn this into a minor league podcast, we can say Jeremy Pena won the ALCS
homegrown
MVP
guy
as a rookie, homegrown player, really good defender, really good runner. Didn't get on base as much as I think anybody would have liked him to, but showed plenty of power during this season. And we will tie this back in later. One of my favorite facts about Jeremy Pena: was born in Dominican, grew up in Rhode Island, went to the University of Maine. It was the
Black Bears.
Bear. And why am I bringing that up? Well, you'll see when Josh comes on next segment. How's that?
So I like that. I like that tease. So let's dive into something minor league baseball related. The Arizona Fall League is coming to its apex here in 2022. And Sam, as he noted earlier, is currently in the Grand Canyon State. You've gotten to watch the AFL for a few days. Give us your impressions of this year's crop of prospects. Obviously, you've been watching from afar for a little while, but being there on the ground in Arizona, tell us what it's been like.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every year. The Arizona Fall League is one of the great events for prospect watchers. Anybody who cares about the minor leagues, specifically players, every game here feels like an all-star game. We're coming up on the Fall Stars game next weekend, and I'm very excited to be here for that. And we can talk about that more next weekend when rosters are set. And there's a home run derby this year. So very much looking forward to that. But yeah, my first game when I got here on Monday, I got here last weekend, but my first game on Monday was Kamar Rocker, who, I'm talking to some of my pipeline colleagues. Jim Callis has said might be the 4th most famous fall leaguer of all time, or at least mostly like high anticipation, just because we haven't seen him yet in the minors. We saw him in Indy Ball this year. He was a surprise pick at number 3 overall to the Rangers. Some questions about his shoulder, considering he had surgery last year, and his elbow. It seemed like the Mets were concerned about both of those last year. That's why they didn't sign him out of the draft. Rangers not as concerned, taking number 3 overall, sign him, add him to their mix. They let him debut in the Fall League. I got him for his longest start so far. He eclipsed 50 pitches in one start for the first time so far with Surprise. He pitched in the third inning for the first time. He was around 94, 96, which is a step up from where he was in his last Vandy season. So that's good. Again, only pitching in the third inning. It wasn't a very lengthy outing. But his fastball command was actually pretty spotty. He opened the game with 5 straight balls, which prompted Henry Davis, the 2021 number 1 overall pick, to come out and chat with him, just give him a minute. Rocker said that was very helpful. So it's good to see them have a similar rapport, or a good rapport anyway. But yeah, when Rocker was really on, it seemed like it was the slider in the second inning. He was just getting whiff after whiff after whiff with that slider. It's a grade we grade out at 70 on the 20 to 80 scale. And I looked every bit of that 70 grade when I saw it. So he said, like, that's what I'm gonna get my swings and misses on right now. It's good to have that in the back pocket, but it's going to come down to fastball command, which makes sense for somebody who's had such a lengthy time off, is still coming off surgery. Sometimes putting the ball where you want is the last thing to come. It's good that the velocity was at least there. Some of the other things that have stood out to me this week, I got to see Jordan Walker homer. He's the top prospect in the fall league this year. Jordan Walker, if you've ever seen him play in the Cardinal system, just a massive human being. They are moving him to the outfield this year. I got to see him from right field. He's had some incredible throws in the fall league, hitting upper 90s from the outfield. Some of the hardest throws that Cardinals outfielders have ever had in the StatCast era. So we know his arm is going to play out there. It's roughly average speed, I would say. He covers a good ground for his size, but I don't think he's going to be a full-time center fielder, but if he can be a right fielder, that gets him out of the shadow of Nolan Arenado. So the arm playing out there is certainly a good sign for him. The fact that the power is playing. The Cardinals, you look at their crop last year, pretty much everybody who they sent to the fall league, I think actually it was everybody they sent to the fall league, played for the big league club this year. This is an organization that treats the AFL not as a way to make up for lost innings or lost at-bats necessarily, but as an actual prospect proving ground, prospect training school, whatever you want to call it, or finishing school. It's a real opportunity to launch yourself into the major league conversation. Brendan Donovan was in the AFL last year. Lars Newpart was in the AFL last year. Nolan Gorman, all those guys made significant contributions to St. Louis this year. So Jordan Walker using this opportunity to not only show, offensively that he can hit, and again, I saw him homer. It was a long, majestic homer. It looked great. The bat's certainly going to play. But proving to them that he can play the outfield, and what I saw, he looked fine. And again, if the arm's going to work out there too, that's just another weapon that Jordan Walker has. So was excited to see him. Maybe my personal highlight was something I wrote about on Wednesday. Zach Daniels, the Astros prospect, hit a homer, according to TrackMan, and I triple checked with the guy next to me and with Zach Daniels himself. It was measured at 481 feet. Which is
pretty good.
Insane. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty
19
good.
feet shy of 500. Pretty good.
Exit velocity of 114 miles an hour. So again, every bit of those 481 feet, and you saw where it went, he hit it to right center. So it was an oppo shot off Ryan Cusick, a guy who can touch triple digits. So Daniels even said to me, I don't really have to do much. He provides the power. The ball's coming in at 100. I'm sending it out at 114. You just have to make solid contact. Not everybody can hit it 481 feet, mind you. The guy has really, really good raw power. But yeah, the fence at Surprise Stadium was 400 feet. He hit it over the berm beyond it onto the concourse in right center. So that was really neat to see. Noel V. Marte hit one that TrackMan had at 460 feet. Noel V. Marte, we always thought, can be a really good power hitter. It's the reason why he's a top 100 prospect. But Zach Daniels making the most of this opportunity. And for him, he was coming off a right wrist injury that kept him out for 2 weeks in the fall league. So I was like, how does it feel now? It's like, I think we're good. I think we're good now. So that was special to see. That's, we can make a list of the top prospects in the fall league, and that's good to do every year. But, I get more excited by the guys who are breakout guys here, who are, using 6 weeks in the desert in which you are going up against top competition to show, hey, I belong here. I'm a name you should know. One I'll throw out, who was on my list, but is becoming a bigger name out here, is Edouard Julien of the Minnesota Twins. Had back-to-back 2-homer games. Julian, like what he's known for coming into this is taking walks and making solid contact, but more of an on-base guy. So for him to have 4 homers in the span of 2 games, I think entering today, he was the OPS leader in the Arizona Fall League. He has a 1.264 ERA. He's slugging above 700. And oh, by the way, he's still reaching base. He's got 14 walks in 13 games and a 525 on base percentage. So he's really taking advantage of this and showing like, hey, I have a little bit more than just a really discerning eye at the plate.
So that's what's going on in the Arizona Fall League. You can continue to track the AFL and all of the top prospects in minor league baseball who are in the Arizona Fall League at MILB.com and MLB Pipeline as well. The 2022 Arizona Fall League schedule, which continues over the next really just like week and a half now. There is not a whole lot else coming up. The Fall Stars game is next week.
It's next weekend.
Followed by the championship game pretty much immediately afterwards.
A week after that.
Yeah, that week is big. It used to be mid-season for the Fall Stars game, and then the end of the season was the championship. But now everything is kind of, packed around the same week of events, which I think is really cool. And there, finally, I've got the actual dates in front of me. So the Fall Stars game, the Home Run Derby is on November 5th. The game itself is on November 6th. And then the play-in semifinals are on Friday the 11th, and the championship is Saturday the 12th. Whew, that was a lot of tap dancing to try to get to where the actual dates were. But I did it. We got it in the end.
And look at that, just to bring it back to what we were talking about at the beginning, there's expanded playoffs in the AFL.
Exactly. And you know what? They'll probably be fun. With the AFL, it's a little different because there's 6 teams and 4 get in. But still, it's very cool. So that's our AFL conversation for this week's episode of the Show Before the Show. Josh Jackson swings by for Ghosts of the Miners, and we're back to wrap it up on the other side. We interrupt this podcast to bring you another thrilling edition of Ghosts of the Miners. Now, here's your correspondent and host, Joshua Jackson.
Welcome back to Ghosts of the Miners, in which all of you out there in Radioland must identify the legitimate historical pop club hiding amidst the fraudulent pair. One is worth talking about more than a century later. The others have never previously been mentioned. In the last segment, I asked you which of the following minor league baseball teams did at one time exist. A. The Richmond Richmen. B. The Eureka Gold Grabbers. C. The Bangor Millionaires. You're in the money if you picked C. The Bangor Millionaires, who earned their keep in the New England State League from 1894 through 1896, representing Maine's Queen City long before it became famous for Stephen King. Situated just upriver from the bay where the Penobscot meets the Atlantic, Bangor enjoyed a prosperous second half of the 19th century as lumber barons accumulated fortunes by having forests of timber floated down the river from Maine's North Woods for processing in the city's hydro-powered sawmills, then shipping the output, mostly planks for ships and construction, or huge reams of paper, the world over. With ostentatious mansions dotting Bangor's broad way, the burg got a reputation for being home to the hoity-toity, especially as the hoi polloi of New England, who relied not on lumber but the shoe and textile mills, suffered the effects of the Panic of '93. And so, when Bangor burst into the New England League the very next season, the Millionaires they were called. You might think those millionaires of the Queen City immediately became diamond royalty, but they were outclassed. Bangor got a lot of bang for its bucks, but the club fell to Fall River, a team representing one of those depression-stricken textile towns in the region, in all 3 of its years in the New England League, which the Fall River Club dominated from its inaugural season of 1893 straight through the year the Millionaires spent their last dime, 96, when Fall River featured a promising Rhode Island-born rookie by the name of Nap Lajoie, who was paid an astronomical sum of $500 for the season. Even if the Millionaires weren't shelling out that kind of scratch, they did break even, 48-48, in their inaugural season, and in the next 2 years, a bet on them was usually money in the bank. And, in fact, they might have sunk Fall River in '96 had all been on the level. The season officially finished with the two teams tied in wins, but with Fall River having more losses. Bangor's newspapers declared the Millionaires champs on September 8th. But 3 days later, Fall River played some hastily scheduled makeups of previously canceled games against clubs like the Pawtucket Maroons and the New Bedford Browns. Bangor protested the New England League's decision to name Fall River champions, making noise at a meeting the following January at the famous Parker House Hotel in Boston. But the Millionaires couldn't accumulate enough interest in their case and ultimately came away empty-handed and empty-pocketed. Officials from other teams also complained about travel costs to Bangor, only to have games against the Millionaires not pay out. So, Bangor left the loop, joining a renegade Maine State League for an ill-fated 1897 season as the Bangor Cubs. They never grew into Bears, as the circuit quit in July. And that's how the Millionaires went broke. Now, on to the question for next time. Which of these teams might have taken off for Europe in the minors of yesteryear? A. The Laredo Launchers. B. The Athens Airmen. C. The Paris Rockets. Want to know the answer? Get airborne. Or tune into the next Ghost of the Minors. But for now, you'll have to excuse me. My producer Ben Hill is joining the geese as they fly south for winter, and he is one odd duck.
Josh Jackson bringing the knowledge, as always, on Ghost of the Minors.
I mean, how much of a Josh version of Ghost of the Minors was that? I mean,
It was
Bangor,
very
Maine.
good.
Yes, and it's very good. It you learn something from it. I mean, I emailed Josh when he sent out the script. My grandma is, I always considered the queen of Bangor, Maine. Like, I just heard about Bangor all the time. That was her hometown growing up. So it was almost like this mythic land up in Maine that she would always talk about. We were not millionaires, as far as I know. Like, none of that money trickled down to us. But it was really fun to see that script come through and see Bangor featured in this way, because right now we only have one Maine minor league team that is obviously in Portland, but just a good reminder that minor league baseball touches all the states in multiple ways and has a history everywhere.
Very much going to need a picture from Josh of the thing that is described on Google's quick facts of Bangor, Maine, or Bangor, Maine, as Johnny Cash does in that song. Quote, on Main Street, a towering statue of folkloric lumberjack Paul Bunyan hints at Bangor's former status as a timber hub. So, Josh, please, photo with the Paul Bunyan, please. With a matching shirt, if you have one. I would imagine he's wearing some kind of flannel.
I mean, he must have that.
So.
I'm sure he has the suspenders somewhere too.
Yeah. So that'll do it for this week's episode of the show before the show. You can find us again on social media. Sam Dykstra, MILB. Josh Jackson, MILB. Benjamin Hill at Ben's Biz. I am at Tyler Mon, and for all those dudes, that's all. I'm Tyler. We'll talk to you next week.